And hello again. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Automate Product Returns and Move Financial Analytics Beyond Excel, hosted by Ultrix and Decisive Data. My name is Scott Trothan. I'm with Ultrix. I am joined today by Michael Stead, who is the Ultrix practice leader at Decisive Data. Decisive Data is a premier partner of Ultrix, meaning they're top tier, and they are based out of the Seattle, Washington area. We're going to be covering a few things, but mostly going to spend some time demonstrating how analysts who work in finance and accounting can take a lot of the tedious work that they often have to do in spreadsheets in order to process returns from retailers and reporting back to manufacturers, how to take all that tedious work that takes a lot of time and a little bit of manual labor, move that into Ultrix, automate it, and get back a few hours and a little bit of happiness in your life. A few housekeeping items as we get started today. I am recording this session, so anyone who signed up for the webinar here today will receive a copy of the replay. And also, if you have questions, as everyone's phone lines are muted here, you can go ahead and ask them via the Q&A tab in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And with that, we are going to go ahead and get started. This will not be a long webinar today. We're going to take about 20 to 25 minutes to go through some of this information here. We're going to talk about automating the return process and being able to take segments and in fact, the entirety of your financial analytics process and moving it beyond Excel and into Ultrix. And like I said, we'll have a little bit of Q&A at the end here. Just a reminder again, please use the Q&A tab, ask any questions that you may have throughout the course of this, the next 25 minutes or so, and we will definitely answer these questions here once we get to the end. So Ultrix provides, and for those of you who are not familiar with us, Ultrix is a analytics platform where we provide a complete platform to cover your analytics journey and your analytics process. Many of you may be familiar with some of our capabilities around preparing and blending data, where we allow you to take data from any number of different sources, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, you've got data in Oracle, data in NetSuite, data in Salesforce. You can take all that data, bring it into Ultrix, and prep and blend it to begin to create a single or a source of trusted data to begin your analytics process and be able to do some analysis on that. We allow you to, the advanced analytics side of the platform allows you to build predictive advanced analytic models where you can perform complex calculations and analysis on your data. No coding, no PhD required. Although if you do have that nice title by your name, or you just like to code, you can leverage different advanced analytics codes such as R, SQL, and Python in order to complete your advanced analytics process. We also allow you to discover different data sources within your organization in a governed way. Being able to share data with your colleagues while maintaining data protection is also another key aspect of our platform. Being able to collaborate and know where data is being held within your organization so that you can share insights across the board, whether it be with your peers or with different members of your leadership team. And then finally, we allow you to deploy and manage different analytics, your analysis, and being able to share advanced models, whether it be through your website or through your processes there. All of this within, supported by a culture of data science and analytics. As you can see here, we have a very diverse customer base, working with customers from various backgrounds here, including manufacturing, some of the largest retailers in the world, and also some of the largest telecommunication companies in the world. And finally, just a little quick plug here. We do have our Inspire conference coming up here in early June. We're expecting well over 2,000 analysts and data scientists from around the world to join us in Anaheim and begin and have some wonderful discussions, wonderful presentations on being able to continue your journey into self-service data analytics, addressing the modern challenges that many analysts are facing. It's a great conference. We invite you to, if you are registered, Decisive Data, our partner who is presenting on this webcast today, will be there. You can ask Michael Stead in person some of your questions. And if you're not registered, gosh, why not? It's a great opportunity to network with and meet your peers from around the world and organizations much like your own, and continue a discussion about how to solve your current data challenges. So we invite you. Please register today. It's coming up fast, and it's filling up pretty quick. So we would love to see you in Anaheim here. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Stead from Decisive Data, and he is going to begin showing us a live demonstration in terms of how to take the return process out of Excel and automate it into Ultrix, making your life a little bit easier. Michael, take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Scott. All right, welcome everybody to an automation analysis and an example that I'm going to walk you guys through today. And before we even jump in, I want to commend you all because you are not what this cartoon is depicting. You guys are all here because you want to actually have automation and you're not too busy to actually stop and say, is there some way to make this better? So I'm happy you're here to join. This is something I'm really passionate about, giving time back to your day. And so let's go ahead and dive into the use case. So, Scott, go ahead and go to the next slide. For what we're going to be describing is that we're an office retailer organization. That means that we sell office supplies and we are essentially a reseller, taking it from different manufacturers. And we currently have a process that's run every quarter where the manufacturer pays us back for defective products that we have sold and our customers have returned to us. Now, this is a pretty manual process, taking about 3 hours for us to do every quarter. And we just think, hey, initially we just want to do something that gets a little bit of time back into one of our analyst days. And we heard about Ultrix and we want to be able to use it to automate this. So we came up with a new proposed process. We want to do this monthly. We still want our manufacturer to pay us back for defective products. And we want to automatically create this detailed report and email it to the manufacturer via some main contact. So that way we don't have to think about this anymore. It's a set and forget. So we're going to do 4 key things. We're going to blend different pieces of data that you usually garner within Excel. We're then going to identify the return amounts and the products that are associated with it to request back from our manufacturers. We'll create these reports and automate it. And lastly, we're going to schedule it. So we're going to go from having 3 hours of manual work to having no time off of our days. So I'm going to actually go ahead and dive into the product. So I'm going to go ahead and request, or I'll wait to have the ability to share my screen. Scott, I'll look for you from that. Great. All right. So I'm going to give you guys an example of our data. So similar to what you might be experiencing in your organization, you might have an EDW or an enterprise data warehouse where you have information like facts, like orders or maybe product information that you can actually see and compare for different data analysis. So much like that, we have the same thing and we've exported it in Excel. Similarly, you might have a disparate data source, meaning coming from a different system where you're getting additional pieces of information. Like in our case, we're getting returns. And what we need to do is we need to blend this as well as with our EDW data and some information from our manufacturer, like their contact information, before we even start diving into automating these report building. So let's go ahead and start doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of these. And we're going to use this tool being Ultrix. Now, if you haven't been introduced to Ultrix before, it's a visual advanced analytics platform, meaning you can both analyze the past, present, and future. And it's a code-free environment allowing you to use drag-and-drop tools in order to perform data transformations and automation processes. Now, as I go through this, I'll describe what each of the different tools do, but just know that we're actually using only a small part of the product, mainly in this in and out preparation and join area, but there's also things such as predictive tools, spatial analysis tools, as well as additional reporting tools, and even leveraging your databases that you have on your server or in your environment. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing we're going to want to do is that we're going to bring in this in and out data tool or input data tool, and we're going to go find different pieces of information that we want to use for automation. So I can click this drop down and see file, and here I can see all the different files that I'm going to be using for our demonstration today. But if I ever want to know other files that Ultrix can intake, I can see I can take in text files, Ultrix's own proprietary database, CSVs, spatial information like Google Earth KML files, Excel. There's even Access in here, as well as looking at zipped files. But for our case today, we're just going to be looking at Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in our information, and I want to bring in our order information. And the super nice part is that Ultrix brings this in, and I can see the first 100 rows, so I can know what data am I dealing with. And so sure enough, I see all of our different orders, how much that was spent with us, being this extended sales cost right here, so $14.30, as well as how it was shipped and if it was returned or not. So the next thing I want to do is actually bring in this product information, because we want to be able to have our different manufacturers know what products are being returned. So I'm actually going to bring in the same file and pull in a different sheet. And so I'm going to find DIM product. And now again, I see the first 100 records just to give me an understanding of the actual product name, manufacturer, category, and subcategory. And now we're going to do the first thing that many of you guys in Excel know by and large, and that's like a VLOOKUP, but what we call in Ultrix a join. So I can take one piece of information, being this file, and the second one, join them together, and I'm going to join them on product ID. And the nice part is it actually shows me if I'm going to have duplicate file names coming through, or excuse me, header names. And so I'm going to deselect, making sure my product ID, which shows up here, is not going to show up twice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this green button up here called Run. And when I click that, what it does is it executes the operations that I've dictated, such that now I can see order information next to my product information. All right, so we're going to keep going. The next thing we want to do is bring in our returns. So I'm going to go out to Excel again. In this case, it's a different Excel file that I want to be blending. And I'm going to bring in this first sheet. And I can see here's all my return information. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I want to join this to this main file that I've been using. So I can join it together using these little tools. And in this case, I'm going to join on order product ID. And seeing that I have duplicate fields again, I want to deselect them from within this interface. So now I have a return ID, date, the amount that was returned, and the reason why it was returned. All right, we'll go ahead and run it, and we're going to see what it looks like. And you can see now, in addition to having our product information, there's our return information. So this is taking mere seconds, but I'm doing the equivalent of VLOOKUPs or indexing and match, depending on how you look at it with Excel. All right, last piece is that I know I eventually want to be emailing these returns to our manufacturers. And so I'm going to bring in some email information, just manufacturer contact. And in there I have the manufacturer name and the primary contact who we're going to go to. And I'm going to, again, join it together. So whenever we're doing an automation step, this first step of data blending is always the first thing that has to be done. And it's something that you'll find in every automation that you'll be executing on. And it's super useful because knowing that you have the data correct allows you to actually do everything else with the same process every time. If you bring in data at different points, you might miss information, or you could be having it where rows are getting dropped. All right, so I now have my manufacturer contact on here. I'm going to click Run again, so that way I can see what the final output looks like. And if I scroll all the way over to the side, I can see, sure enough, I have the contact email next to the return information. All right, so according to the steps, we've just nailed step one, and that is blend our pieces of information. And the next piece, what we want to do is actually apply our business logic. So when I look at return reason, I'm noticing a bunch of different reasons that a certain customer could return the products. So found a better deal elsewhere, did not match the description, but down here I see defective. And we have an agreement with our manufacturers that for every defective product we find, we get a full refund of the amount. So what I want to do is take all of this return and order information and filter it down to just defective products. And because I'm making this so it's occurring every month, I want to make it so that way I'm only looking at this current month's data, so for the month of May. So what I'm going to do is go up here to this Preparation tab and find a filter tool and drag it onto the canvas, this white space being the canvas. And provides a really easy interface for me to use. So for a basic filter, I can say I want to find my return reason and say anytime it equals defective, I want it to show. But because I want another filter to be on here, I'm actually going to add another filter here, and I'm going to say and then I can search through and find really easily within this tool set all the different columns that are in my data. And in this case, I just want to find return date, and thank you, summary. And I want it to be greater than or equal to the 1st of this month. So I'm going to go ahead and click run and see if this is the information that I want. And sure enough, I have 10 rows of data where I can see that my return date was all in this month and they're all defective. All right, great. So I have the data that I need. Now I need to apply some logic in order to find out how much money the manufacturers need to give back to us. And how I determine that is actually by looking at 3 fields. The first being this returned quantity. So I notice that there's 3 being returned, but in the original order, they actually ordered 4 of them. So I actually need to take 3/4 of this extended sales amount. So what I'm going to do is actually create a new field here. And I'm going to be creating a field that I'm going to call extended cost per item. And what I'm going to do there is I'm actually going to pull in from these existing columns. The first thing being the extended sales amount. And I'm going to divide it by, and I can use some IntelliSense that actually Ultrix has inside of it, divided by quantity. And the next thing I want to do is actually change my data type and make it into a fixed decimal and say I want a total of 10 digits and 2 of those digits being behind the decimal. So great, I now have the cost per item including tax. Now what I want to do is find out how much is it going to be applied once you have the returned items multiplied by this cost per item. And so for that one, I'm going to just do another new column. And this guy, I'm going to call it amount to credit. And I'm going to do this extended cost per item, meaning I can actually take the logic that I've dictated earlier and use it in subsequent steps. I'm going to multiply that by the returned quantity. So now I can see this new value right here. So it gives me a little preview of my data, so I know that's actually $51.15. And again, I'm going to make sure that this is actually a number that I'm dealing with. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and run this. And now what I can see at the very end here is the cost per item and that amount that I need to be credited for every single return that occurred. Okay, so business logic has been applied. This has saved me a ton of time. Now what I want to do is create a report that I can have showing these details and I can send off to each manufacturer. So to do that, the first thing I want to do is reduce my data set down to just the fields I need. And to do that, I'm going to use this tool called the Select tool. So in this, it shows all the different fields that are in my data. And what I'm going to do is actually get rid of everything that doesn't have to do with a return. So I highlight all this order information and I deselect it. And then I want to reorder this information so it makes a little more sense to whoever's reading it. So I'm going to highlight all these different return ID, date, quantity, reason. And I'm actually going to drag it and move it above the product information. And lastly, they don't need to know the extended cost per item. They just need to know the amount of credit. Then I click Run. And sure enough, I've reduced my data set now to being just the fields I want. And now last but not least, I'm going to throw it into a CSV file. So to do that, I go to my In-Out tool, look at this Output Data area, and drag it onto the canvas. From there, we'll see the very similar interface to what we see with the input data tool, except that I actually want to push this out to a new file. And so in this case, I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to say Return Report Total. And so it automatically configures it for me, and I can click Run. And from there, I can actually see that Ultrix has made this file. You can see it in this log down here. And if I want to check it out, I can actually just click within the tool. And what it's going to do is actually open up the file for me to see. So sure enough, there's my 10 different returns I have to deal with. All right, great. So we've created a report, but now we want to get into those automation steps where I don't have to manually email this off to people. So to do that, we need to first split the report into separate, different reports per each manufacturer. So a report for this one, these returns, etc. And then we want to actually have them emailed off automatically. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a really cool part of Alteryx. And within this output data tool, there's this ability for me to group files based on a certain field in my data. And so you can either have it append a suffix to your file or table name and group all the files with that value. So in this case, manufacturer, it will group every return for each manufacturer. Or I can change the entire file path that I dictate. And so I'm actually going to do that. So what I want to do is pick the place where I want to put all these different reports. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up File Browser. I'm going to go ahead and find the area I want to put all these reports, and you can see them previously made. And I'm going to copy this entire string here. And what I'm going to do is actually put it over this in this formula tool. I'm going to create this new field here, and I'm going to call it return file. And I'm just going to put an apostrophe to make it know it's a text, add another apostrophe, and now I can actually dictate the exact location where I'm going to be putting these files. So I'm going to add a little backslash there, and then I get to dynamically add in information that I might want into my file. So in this case, I'm going to add in our manufacturer name. And then I'm going to add in the text of return report.csv. So if I want to see the preview of what it's going to be showing in Ultrix, this is the actual file path in which I'll be using. And lastly, I'm going to change it so that way my data type is only going to be 254 characters. Ultrix always defaults to the largest value to ensure it never truncates anything. And then after creating that, I'm going to go over to this output file, and I'm going to say create my return file by changing the entire file path. And I'm going to make sure I don't keep that file path in my output because they don't need to know where I kept my file. And I'm going to click Run. And now you can see in this output data that it's actually created 7 different reports grouping the different returns together. So let's go ahead and look at one of them. And right here we'll see it's already automatically split out all the different pieces of information as well as the contact information. So this is pretty nifty. I've now split it up individually, and now we just have to email it off. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out, and then we're going to go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize my information so that's per each manufacturer. And this is similar to what you do with a subtotaling in Excel. And then I want to say, I'd like to have the contact email I want to be sending to. I also want to pull in the return file so I know where or what file I'm going to be sending off. And then lastly, I want to take the complete total of the amount that they have to have credited. I'm going to make sure it's named amount to credit. And then I'm going to use a really cool tool in Alteryx called this email tool. And I can actually create an email that automatically sends off. I'm just going to configure it with some SMTP settings. This is how you can send emails. And then I'm going to have it dynamically send emails to the contact that I've specified. I'm going to say it's from a certain area, so I can say reporting. And then I'm going to say that this is a return report. And now I get to actually add in that attachment that I want to bring in. And so I click Add, and I can see it either specifying a file individually, or I can take the file from a field name, and this is where I'm going to use that return file that we talked about. And then I can actually add something to my body here where I say, like, please see attached. Or what I can do, and it's even one up, is actually similar to what we were looking at beforehand, and we're going to actually dictate it with a formula tool and I'm going to call this email body. And in this, I'm going to actually state what I want to have in that email body with dynamic pieces of information. So I'm going to say that you owe me this amount because it has been charged to, I can add in the manufacturer with this IntelliSense feature, due to defective products. Please see attachment for details, actually. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing, keeping my size a little bit smaller. And it says, hey, I got a quote that's unmatched. I just need to make sure I put the quote at the end. So now, take this body information, and I'm going to take the dynamic thing we've created with the email body, and I'm going to click Run. So sure enough, it just ran the workflow and actually sent off emails as well. And this is an example of an email that actually you would have received from this, saying where it's from, and there you can see it actually came through right away, as well as the file that's being attached. So if I double-click this file and open it up, I sure enough have that CSV file. And so now I've completely automated my process end-to-end in order to send off emails for all the different returns that a company might need. Okay, so the last thing is, what if I actually don't want to do this manually, but instead have this run automatically every month? So to do that, what I always want to do is actually change my logic so that instead of hard-coding this return date, I want to make it dynamic. Now, in order to save time, because I only see that we have 3 minutes left, I've actually already written this out for us, and I'll just explain it. But basically, I've said I want my return date to be greater than the first day of the previous month and less than the first day of the current month. So what this means is that I want to take last month's data. So in this case, I'm going to be just looking at the month of April. And then what I can do in running this is actually go up here to Options and Schedule Workflow. I can schedule it using my machine, and I'm just going to say this is return information. And I can see here how I want to schedule this. So I want it to run every month on the first day of the month at 10:30 a.m. and click OK. So now, every single month, I will have this workflow that I've created here in the last about 15 minutes or so, and it's already going to automatically calculate the amount that each manufacturer needs to give us back for returns and send off the emails to the main contact. All right, so that's the entire demonstration. I'd love to open it up for question and answer and hand it back to you guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael, for that. Really appreciate you sharing some of this work that you've done. And this is not just kind of an abstract model. Have you guys worked these, created these models, created these workflows for some of your customers here previously?
Yes. So we actually worked with a large telecoms firm, and we actually saved about 95% of their time by automating a lot of their accounting processes. So they went from 300 hours down to 15 hours after just a small 3-month window, giving them essentially an entire team back in time.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, that's, and this is, it's just one of the, in terms of, in terms of the, just the work that we see Decisive Data doing with Ultrix, this is not atypical. This is, this is the power of the software here in terms and power of the platform. Question coming in, it's like, so in terms of, to generate the emails but not auto send, I'm sorry, I need to read that question a little bit more thoroughly here. Let me skip that one. So how can folks get started with this process in terms of, being able to automate a lot of these the return process here?
Yeah, so in going through getting started on these, what you always want to do is just get the people in the room who need to own the business logic and the data of doing any of these processes. So what we've seen is that we want to take information from the business owner to say what's the logic that we're building, aka the logic that goes into these tools, as well as the data owner, so that way you can understand how it's being blended. And then you can decide on how you want to deliver it and report on it, which is this last piece that we went through. So if you're able to get those three components going, it can just be a jump start for going into any automation process. And this is something that we actually can walk you through. We have a template that we would walk you through in order to say who owns this and how, and what's the data like, the sources, how do you want to handle exceptions. There's actually many more things of like validation and such that can go into these processes. But just for the sake of the half-hour time frame we had, we wanted to just hit the largest use case that we've seen, and that's just automation.
Michael, a question coming in. Can you use this process to find errors in the data itself, such as outliers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I like to do is actually within these join tools, you can actually see that we were just taking this middle part where it just says, give me all the information that matched. But commonly what happens is that you'll actually have information that doesn't match that you care about. So for instance, you could actually say, everything in this output, this left side, are orders without return. And if you expect every order to have a return, this actually might be an outlier. So what we commonly will do, we'll actually do something similar to this process, and we'll actually have an output here, and we'll like save it off to a different file. So we'll just call this like order exceptions. And then we'll actually create an email that sends off this to whoever the business owner is, so they are alerted only when it occurs of exception. You can also do this by checking logic. So saying, let's say you are expecting all your returns to add up to a certain value that you have in your general ledger, and it doesn't equal that value, you can do something similar there too.
Excellent. And is there any way to generate the emails but not auto-send in case you find, maybe there are a few emails that do not need to be sent?
Good question. So unfortunately, if you put this tool in and you have it enabled, it will send the emails off. It won't create them and spawn them on your screen. But what you can do is put checks in to ensure that you're only sending off emails that you would care for. And that's something similar to the exceptions here. Also, if there's ever an error in this workflow, so let's say I was to make an error, and I'm going to say error, and I'm going to say putting a text string into a field that has an integer, and I click run, it's going to give me an error, and it's going to say, let me see if I can find it. No, it actually doesn't show up here, but it actually won't send off emails without it being an errorless workflow. So that way you won't have an error and an exception, and it sends off the email anyway. So that little catch has saved us a lot of headaches and could save you a lot of headaches if you're always trying to make sure it runs correctly.
It's almost like a review process. You may actually be able to check out the output there before they're sent that way.
Correct.
Excellent. So with that, we are out of time here. We wanted to make sure this was a brief, concise webinar here, so that folks could just take glean a few nuggets of information from here, and kind of view a solid real world example of the work that Ultrix can do in terms of helping you automate the returns process. So, Michael Stead, thank you very much for showing some of the work that Decisive Data is doing. And I want to make sure I'm going to take the ball back here really quick.
Absolutely.
Just so I can make sure I'm showing folks, your contact information, because I'm sure folks will want to get in touch with you here. So, like I said here at the beginning, we are recording this presentation, and we will be sharing this information with everyone here once we get done. But I wanted to just make sure that you've got Michael Stead's information in front of you there. He can be, his email is on the screen in front of you now. We'll also be sending out the recording of this along with some contact information, the follow-up. So on behalf of Decisive Data and Ultrix, we want to thank everyone for joining today. Hope you found the time that you spent with us here valuable, and we look forward to speaking with you very soon. We'll catch you on down the trail.